Welcome in, folks, for another episode of What's Bruin, brought to you by our friends over at Ice Shaker. I am joined, as I always am, by the one and only Dom Tiano. Dom, are you excited for this week's show and our special guest?
I'm always excited, Chris. Always. I've accomplished a lot today. Uh, Harvard and Clarkson are just going into overtime. College and Denver gets underway in about 30 minutes. And we have the one and only Gayle here to talk some Boston Bruins.
And here is Gayle. Thank you so much for joining us again. Dom, I couldn't have done the intro better, minus the one fact that, Gayle, I'm sure you are absolutely thrilled that your Northeastern Huskies beat BC last night in the
Yeah.
Hockey East
Absolutely.
tournament. What a game.
Absolutely. That was amazing. That was such a great game to watch.
Oh, man. I
It
almost thought
was.
BC was going to pull out the comeback, too.
I was nervous, especially when they took that penalty, even though there was only like 25 seconds left with the goalie pulled and the way BC plays. But, it's like you said to me, Chris, Colin was playing great in net. So,
Oh, man. Vegas has a good one there, it looks like. So, well, last time you were on with us, the playoff picture looked quite a bit different, as did the roster.
yeah.
So many places that we can start. We are.
I know where to start.
I was to say we are actually at Bettman 500 and sixth place in the wild card rankings now. Dom, where do you want to kick things off?
Gail, let's start with not the draft picks, but the prospects that the Bruins brought in, because fans are out in droves to give Fabian Lysell, Georgi Merkulov a shot, bring Matt Poitras up, and today Fraser Mitten scored a natural hat trick for Providence and assisted on the fourth goal by Riley Duran, and now it's let's bring Mitten up. Let's start with the kids. Would you, if you were Don Sweeney, bring them up to this shit show right now?
Not the unproven ones. I might give Poitras. But the thing about Potter having him play in Providence is he's getting the ice time, he's getting the power play looks, and I know people are like, "Oh no, he just needs to play with Pasternak." You're not going to break up Pasternak, Saka, and Geeky. You're just not. They're your best line, so you're not going to break them up. So bringing up Poitras to have limited chances, it doesn't really make sense, especially when you know that the Providence Bruins are going to make it to the Calder Cup playoffs and he's going to get that experience that he absolutely 100% needs. Merkulov, I would bring him up before I would bring Poitras up. I think they know what they have with Poitras. I think that there's no concern with what they have. I think they need, if they really want to see what Merkulov can do, this is the time to do it. With not having Brad Marchand anymore, Charlie Coyle, Trent Frederick, Justin Brazeau, this is the time to bring him up and give him a legitimate look down the stretch to see if he has what it takes to play in the NHL on a consistent basis. He's the only one. I wouldn't bring Mitten up. I think that he needs to stay where he is and get acclimated to the Bruins structure. Let him battle for a spot next year. Why bring him up? Because in reality, I know they're 4 points out of a playoff spot. It's not so, and there's what 14. They have 12 games left. 14 games left.
14.
Yeah, they've played
14
68.
games left. They have, I don't want to say weaker opponents, but they do have some weak opponents coming up. And you don't want to say, especially if you're David Pasternak, if you're, any of those forwards that are up here, and even like the newer forwards that just came in, Middlesat has been playing phenomenal. You don't want to say this season's a wash when you're only 4 points out of a playoff spot. I know it's a huge uphill battle, but it's not like they're the Sabres who are, really, there's no way the Sabres are making it in. There's no way Philadelphia, you know what I mean?
I'm glad that you mentioned the Sabres.
But you have that, and I know that the Sabres have 3 games in hand, but the Bruins still, if they were the way they played those first 2 games coming out of the trade deadline, if they can find that consistency, it's like Jeremy Swayman said last night, teams are not respecting them right now, but if they play to their standard and they play the way they did against Tampa a week ago, and they played against Florida like they did coming out of the trade deadline, this team can get on a hot run. Are they going to make the playoffs? Probably not, but I don't see how you just throw in the towel. So I don't think you just bring everyone up. Now, I think Georgie should be up instead of Patrick Brown. That's who I would bring up is I would bring up Georgie instead of Patrick Brown. But the thing is, they're putting Patrick Brown on the 4th line. And that's the other problem that they have is that, and Andy Brickley said it recently on one of the podcasts, is that no one in Providence is really pushing the guys out. If you look at role for role.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you don't want Mikhailov to come up and play 4th line minutes, but who is he taking out on the top line or the second line?
Yeah, when you bring someone up, who are they replacing? Right now, it's not an easy question. I mean, it's an easy question if you don't care about the season. But like I said, I'm glad you mentioned Buffalo because I've seen a lot of people have that take of forget the season. It's a forgotten year. You don't have it. You don't want to make a push. All the different tank options, the players in the high end of the draft. The problem is once you let losing be okay, that has now permeated your locker room. And then you turn into the Buffalo Sabres, the Chicago Blackhawks, the San Jose Sharks. You become a consistently rebuilding team. Detroit's still trying to get out of it. Columbus is still trying to get out of it, and they're not the only ones. Like, it became okay to lose in Seattle. And, it's just once that gets into your locker room, it becomes okay. Right. And that should be unacceptable for the Boston Bruins, and would it be nice to get a high draft pick? Yeah. But first of all, you're going to be in a lottery. So you still have a chance to get the high lottery pick as long as you don't make the playoffs.
Speaking of that, though, I've seen a lot of people on Twitter being like, this team doesn't even know how to lose right or tank right or whatever. The Boston Bruins, that has never been their culture, to throw games, to tank seasons. That is not their culture. The Bruins players, and there have been players that don't enjoy playing in Boston, but 98% of every single player that pulls on that spoked bee understands what it means to play for that original 6 franchise, and they are not going to tank a season for a higher draft pick. It's just not what the Bruins, and it's unacceptable. The players and the fans. No, and the fans wouldn't really be happy if they were as bad as San Jose. Do you really think Boston fans are going to put up with that?
Right.
Because if they start doing it, it's not one season. It's multiple seasons, just like you said about Buffalo.
Yep. I want to shout out, we got Kevin in the chat asking what we did to get you on again and grace us with your presence. Matrix is jumping in. We got Ace from Two Pad Stacks, Sully from Something's Brewing out there, Mel from Something's Brewing out there, Michael jumping in saying good evening as well. Ace, thank you for the compliments on the beard. And then Joey says that respectfully, the Bruins are done. They are already playing with a minor league team, and follows it up with they might as well develop the potential team. Joey, they are doing exactly that where they should, down in Providence. Because that losing mentality, once it breaks into your NHL locker room, any kid that you bring up from Providence is going to learn that it's okay. And once they learn that it's okay, there's no point to having your system the way that it is. So there's a winning culture right now in Providence. And you want to keep that. You want to isolate whatever problems you have. And I'm not even saying the locker room is a problem. That's one thing I wanted to ask you about, because you're in that locker room pre and post game and that sort of thing. Last time we had you on, we kept talking about how there was something weird. The vibes were just off in the locker room. Obviously, that was, still the Montgomery era. A lot of changes since then. But even now, we're past Coyle, Marchand, Carlo, Montgomery. That locker room has had a ton of turnover. How is that locker room now compared to where it was 3.5 months ago?
So one thing, and I said it on Twitter, and a lot of people said absolutely not. David Pastrnak has stepped up so much as a leader of that team.
He wants that C.
I'm not sure he wants the C, but I think he's not as afraid of it. You know what I mean? Like, I think he understands what his role is, and he's grown so much from last season to this season in terms of the way he talks to the media. And you can see it on the ice when he's talking to other players. Like, he literally is a leader in the room and on the ice. I see more from him than I see from McAvoy, and I know a lot of people don't agree with me, but a lot of people aren't standing there in the locker room talking to the players,
Right.
Seeing their reactions when a question is asked, seeing yes, I know that they put the videos out on YouTube and stuff, but it's face, it's not body language. You know what I mean? You're not seeing the whole picture.
You see from the neck up.
Right. And, I think that McAvoy is not a bad leader. I just don't think he's mature enough yet. And that's just my personal opinion. That is my personal opinion. I know other people believe that he's more mature than Pastrnak, and I 100% disagree. I think Pastrnak really has relished in this leadership role since pretty much McAvoy was injured, Marchand was injured, and then after the deadline. You know what I mean? Like, he literally has put the team on his back in terms of leadership. And Mel, you're right, Zadorov has been phenomenal too with his leadership since the deadline. So, and Zadorov said that too. He's like, both actually, Swayman said it, Zadorov said it, Pastrnak said it. Doesn't matter if they're there 5 years, 5 days, 5 minutes. Everyone has a voice in that locker room. And that's something, again, that's part of the Bruins culture.
John, what do you think of how Pasta and Zadorov have been stepping up as leaders of the team? Do you think they warrant letters going forward?
Well, Pastrnak already has one. Zadorov, I don't know. I'm not there in the room to see what's going on. In terms of interview, there's so much more to being a captain than just conducting interviews. I honestly don't know. I really couldn't tell you.
Well, I'm not saying that Zadorov is ready for a letter yet, because I think Campus Lindholm takes that third letter. Even if they don't have a C next year, you could see Pasta, McAvoy, and Campus Lindholm wearing.
I could see that.
You know what I mean? I think that the team is missing so much without Hampus Lindholm, not just on the ice, but off the ice with leadership as well. He's another one. I've also seen the argument that Pasta isn't, because he doesn't play on the penalty kill, he doesn't deserve to be a captain.
Well, that's got nothing to do with it.
Right. And that's my whole thing. Like, you can't, yes, play on the ice matters, but it's more the interaction with the other players than it is about whether or not you play on the power play or the penalty kill.
I would make the case that would probably send a better message by saying, I understand what my role is. My role is not to kill penalties. I'm going to let the people who are supposed to do that go do that. And I'm going to, as they say, stay in my lane and do this. Dom, were you going to say something?
Yeah, Clarkson just defeated Harvard in overtime, so that's the end of the season for Mason Langenbrunner. Anyway, back to your regularly scheduled program.
I will
Bobby,
say
you're 100% right. Pasta was there during, yes, 100% was there when the 2 years that they the last 2 years that they missed the playoffs. So yeah, him and yeah, he's the only one that was there. McAvoy didn't come in until 2019, 18, 19. I forget when, but it was definitely after.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bobby, we knew what you meant. He just corrected the comment here. Michael saying that Quart was on with Evan the other day and said Hampus may never be the same because of the kneecap, which that does remain to be seen. I mean, right now you can only hope. Boston has a pretty damn good track record when it comes to medical right now, so I'm going to hang on to that for now.
Well, and plus they don't ever rush players back before they're ready, so having the fact that they're not rushing Hampus back and they're giving him the time to recuperate, that he'll be able to hit probably his off-season regimen and be ready for training camp. You know what I mean? As opposed to if they rush him back now, then he has a setback and it could be even worse. So that's one thing that, and of course you want Hampus on the ice, you want McAvoy on the ice, but you're not going to risk their futures for a season that you may or may not make the postseason.
Yeah, and I think we saw that when he was getting back in skating before they went back in for that second procedure, which it sounds to me like that was just we can leave some of the stuff in the knee, we can take it out. It's become uncomfortable, so we're going to go take it out. And now it's just recovering from that. Not an actual setback, just a discomfort of optional removal of equipment that's left in. Maybe there's a little bit better understanding from having talked to him, talk to the team or whatever, but does that sound about right?
Well, the thing is that they're not being as open with they're never that open when it comes to the recovery because they don't want to put the perception out there of in case something does not line up. So they're very careful about they'll let people know about the actual procedures. I think they were more open about McAvoy because it got leaked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That he was in the hospital because it was not talked about at all until Jim McBride put that story out.
Yeah.
They don't like to put stuff out there that isn't cut and dry because if there's no accurate timeline, they don't want to have the perception that a player's not doing this or a player's not doing that or the medical staff is this, the medical staff that. So they're very close to the chest with that stuff.
Yeah, as Tor says, let's hope Hampus comes back 100% so we don't see the sad story of Kevin Miller again, who was such a gamer. Bruce adds in, don't think it would hurt to not have a captain upcoming year and see how it plays out. I don't think it would hurt either. I mean, I think the locker room is such that you don't really need a captain. You can run with 3 or 4 A's and be fine. And that in of itself almost sends a message as well. Kevin says Pasta leads him on the ice and he's slowly adapting to being that leader in the room. I'm on the Pasta train full force.
I've heard a lot of people saying that Pasta is going to ask for a trade. I don't think he will. I don't think he will. I think that if, how many years does he have left on his contract? 6?
He is signed through 2031.
Wow, I was right. 6 years.
Yep.
So I think that maybe 4 years from now, if they're still in the situation then they are right here and now, that he may say, hey, can we, you know what I mean? But I don't see him asking for a trade just because they missed the playoffs this year.
I don't think this retool is going to take as long as people are saying. I really do not.
Boston, because he doesn't. They don't ever blow up the entire team. Yes, we saw key players leave, but the players that they brought in are Boston Bruin players.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Like they may not be the he'll go like Sweeney will find a way to bring in other offensive weapons. He always does figure it out. But the players that they brought in, Middlestat, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce his name.
Husnudinov.
Yeah, him.
The K is silent.
But I think those players are Boston Bruin players. They're not top 6, they're middle 6, but they're still Boston Bruin players. You know what I mean? So they're going to fit the roster. He still needs to get, Sweeney needs to figure out that second line, like who the other scoring depth is going to come from. They need to find secondary scoring, but that's a lot easier when you have the defense, when the defense is healthy. You have that defense. I would put the defensive corps up against any other defense corps in the league when it's healthy. I would, 100%. And I think next year you're going to see the Swayman that we saw last year, not this year, because he's going to have that training camp and he's going to have everything else because he's been playing much better. And I know he's letting up soft goals, but so did Tim Thomas. I mean, let's be realistic. There were times where I was throwing stuff at my TV because Tim Thomas would let up the softest goal and then make a save that he had no business making.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he had a down game the other day against Tampa. I mean, but this year, and everyone wants to blame the contract talks.
You cannot blame that game on Swayman.
No.
Period. You just said a down game against Tampa. That was last night. He gave up the 3 goals in the second period. They were outshot 20-0.
I'm saying people are saying it's a down game.
Oh yeah, it's not though, and that drove me insane when I saw people talking about that last night.
How can you blame the goaltender when your team doesn't shoot the puck on net at all for an entire period? That is not your goaltender's fault.
And he made some phenomenal saves in that game.
I'm going to ask you about another player that came via trade who is a UFA in July, and that's Yoki Haru. Small sample size, liked what I've seen. I'm sure that
better than Bruins.
Yeah, I think that there's something in his analytics that we don't have access to that the Boston Bruins create on their own that says that this guy is a player. I would re-sign him. We first of all, we know Don Sweeney doesn't go after players unless he wants to re-sign them. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think that he would fit in this Boston Bruins defensive core better than and I like Wotherspoon. I like Wotherspoon, but he's not an everyday defenseman. You know what I mean? I think that Yoki Haru would fit in well, especially with Carlo gone.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have Hampus healthy, if you have McAvoy healthy, you have Zadorov, you have Lowry, you have Peak, Yoki Haru would definitely fit in with that defensive core. And Wotherspoon can be your 7th defenseman and rotate in for, to give guys nights off or whatever. But I think that he would fit in well. I think he, like you said, it's a small sample size, but he's not playing horribly. You know what I mean? And he also, you have to think that he has to learn this system. And the Bruins system is, it's what it is. But sometimes you also have to look that maybe they need to change the system to fit the team.
And I think you can get him cheap too.
Yeah.
I think he'll come pretty cheap. He'll be able to play that shutdown role that you wanted Carlo to have, but he'll do it for less and for longer.
Can we also discuss that the Bruins always build their team from the back end out?
Yep.
They always build from the goaltender to the defense and then worry about the offense. They've always been that way. They always work from the back end out. And I think a lot of people forget that they pride themselves on being a team that is hard to play against. And you only do that with your goaltender and your defense first.
Real quick, I love Court's comment. Like the stream. We need enough so we can get Gayle to keep coming back. So please like the stream, whether it's on YouTube or wherever, so that we can convince Gayle to continue to come back. and welcome to the conversation court. There were a couple comments that were made that I did want to cycle back to. Let me just, and I did pull this up. I wanted to check because we were talking about Swayman. Only 3 goaltenders in the entire league have faced more shots than Swayman. They are Andrei Vasilevsky, Igor Shesterkin, and Connor Hellebuck. Mm-hmm. So he has seen as much rubber as the best in the league, with a way worse defense in front of him than what those 3 guys are getting right now. Right. Shesterkin has struggled a little bit as well. Vasilevsky is shown to be, he is still himself. So you can't put it all on him. There was a question back here from Joey. Why has 80 not been given any looks? Swayman is struggling. Korpisalo can't be a part of the future. Why not give 80? Why not give either DiPietro or Brandon Bussey a look at the NHL level in net? Because Swayman's struggling and Korpisalo is apparently not part of the future. What are your thoughts on the goaltending situation? And then we'll get caught up on a few more of these comments.
So I know that Swayman definitely struggled, definitely early on. I think that, again, I will say you cannot blame him for every game. Yes, there are some goals that you're like, how did he let that in? But last night, if you really look at, especially that 4th goal, it deflected twice. You know what I mean? No goaltender stopping that. No goaltender stopping that. So I think if you literally look at every single goal that he's let up, there are some, like the first goal against, who did he get chased against Ottawa? That first goal that went right over his glove, he had to have that goal. He had to have that save. He had to stop that. You know what I mean? But I think that if you really break down every single goal that he's let in, a lot of them aren't ones that he could have had. You know what I mean? So yes, there are some soft goals, but yes, he's struggling, but the whole team is struggling defensively too. Not just, offensively, that's a whole different story. But yes, you can have players, you can have your goaltender steal a game for you, and he's done it. It's not as consistent as it was last year, but if you look at last year to this year, the caliber of team itself. So yes, can you bring up DiPietro or Bussey? You can, but then what are you doing? You can't send either one of them down to Providence. So now you have to free up a roster spot to bring in either DiPietro or Bussey.
Actually, no, you don't, Gayle.
Yeah, right now they're carrying a roster minimum.
You can have over the 23-man roster after trade deadline as long as you're still cap compliant. They still have all of Hampus Lindholm's LTIR money to use, so okay. They can bring them up. The catch is that you're only allowed 4 recalls after trade dedeadline. So who do you recall?
And then, but if they send them back down, don't they have to clear?
No. They can play. They can stay on the roster for 30 cumulative days, or 10 games played without requiring waivers.
Okay.
Well, here's the other thing that I would ask, and Dom, I know you watch as much Providence as anybody. Is either one of them standing out so much that you want to stick them behind this at the NHL level to say you're going to help this team?
Well, it goes back to the point Gayle made about Merkulov, and I've been beating this drum for 2 months now. You have to see what you have. I've been watching Michael DiPietro since 2014. He's not new to me. I watched him before his OHL days with the Windsor Spitfires, so I have a pretty good read on Michael DiPietro. And as much as it hurts me to say this, because I love his competitiveness and his willingness to fight, he's not an NHL goaltender. It's as simple as that.
He's not.
Yeah.
But better.
Yeah, like
He's
I mean,
Malcolm Subban after the throat injury.
I could lie to you and say, yeah, he's this, and this, or I could tell you the cold hard facts. He's not an NHL goaltender. For a goaltender his size to be successful in the NHL, he's got to be UC Saros,
Right.
and he's not.
How are you blaming Corpusalo though? How are people blaming Corpusalo?
I was just gonna say, Joey, you're just flat out wrong on that one. Like, would Corpusalo get through waivers? Maybe, but it's just not gonna. No, it's just no.
I mean,
Moving on.
Corpusalo's 19-10-7. Okay, 19-10-7. He has a 2.78 goals against and a 0.896 save percentage. Swayman has a 3.0 goals against and a 8.897. So they're like right there. And Corpusalo came in against Ottawa and only gave up 1 goal. He played very well against Ottawa. You got to remember, 2 of those goals were empty net goals. They weren't on him.
Right.
So Corpusalo has not played bad. He's played better in Boston than he did in Ottawa.
Oh,
Just like Allmark played better in Boston than when he played in Buffalo.
Yeah, and the defense in Ottawa right now is way better this year than it was last year. So that helps with what Allmark is behind right now. So
sorry, I'm laughing at that comment. I think that they Swayman missing camp and having the workload that he's had is part of the reason why he is struggling. I think that he doesn't think that that's the issue, but not having camp set him behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, I mean, let's also not forget the contract negotiation part itself is a stressful situation for him to be in. Am I getting a deal done? When am I getting a deal done? Media this, media that. No, he didn't help himself by going on podcasts and
to sit out of camp. And then you're hearing all the people saying, this is Swayman's fault. This is Swayman's fault. This is Swayman's fault. I mean, and goaltenders, as it is, have, issues in the head. In a fun way.
Dom, do you want to address why Sacco pulls the goaltender when they're down 2 to 3 goals?
Sometimes it's not the goaltender, and sometimes, most of the time, you make the goaltending switch because your team is doing diddly squat and you're trying to ignite a fire under them. Sometimes it's because the goalie is having an off night, but the majority of the time, it's to give your team a wake-up call.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I will say this though, Sacco to me is really shining through. I think some stuff that we saw in Montgomery, he doesn't make adjustments on the mid-game. He doesn't change things up when they need to be changed enough. And we saw that a lot from Montgomery. So I really don't think, why didn't he call a timeout the other day? Like in that Ottawa game before it got away from him, even in Tampa game, like, has Joe Sacco called a timeout? You know what I mean? I can't remember the last one he called.
Sweeney didn't make any comments. It was Cam Neely that made comments.
Oh, they're not for nothing, but publicly the comments made by Sweeney. Yeah, Sweeney doesn't say anything.
I was at that press conference. Sweeney didn't say anything. It was Cam Neely.
Yeah, and I'm sure if Neely didn't say anything, we wouldn't be complaining about the Swayman contract either. It would look a lot nicer.
Yeah, well, and I think that if Neely had not said what he said, the deal might not have ever gotten done. Let's be realistic. He put it out there what the Bruins offered, not Sweeney. Sweeney never talks about, like, Sweeney has still not said a word about Brad Marchand's contract other than that there was a gap in term. You know what I mean? And that's the most he's ever said about contracts. When, you know what I mean? Like, he does not, when they're in negotiations or if things don't work out, he never talks about money because he never wants it put on the player. Or, you know what I mean? Like, he literally was trying to protect Swayman and not say a word.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that gets Don Sweeney a lot of respect around the league is that he doesn't do anything to throw his players under the bus himself.
Mm-hmm.
Boston is one of the tightest organizations in the league. Dom, agree or disagree? I know you've had some things to say about Sweeney and his availability for comments.
He's just not very open with the media. Not open at all. And you and I had this argument on air. Find any other general manager in the league, and they're talking to the media once a week. Not Don Sweeney.
Can I throw my 2 cents in on that one?
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it has to do with Jeremy Jacobs, not Charlie, Jeremy. I think it has to do with the fact of that because Don Sweeney is 100% said that they won't challenge the refs. They won't call out the league. They won't because the Bruins never want to be. So like, that's why Montgomery, like you would see in press conferences, someone would ask about a non-goal or goaltender interference or a penalty that was called or whatever. And Montgomery would just be like, yeah, well, the refs have a job to do because it like Sweeney has put it out there. The Bruins they're not Paul Maurice. They're not going to call out the refs. They're not John Tortorella. They're not going to call out the league. That is just the way the Bruins operate their business.
Now, so just think if they had done it in 2019.
Right. Because as soon as Craig Berube opened his mouth and started complaining about the refs, that's when that series changed.
Yeah, I mean, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing is a totally different conversation. But yeah, from the top down, it's, we have a problem. We address it diplomatically behind closed doors, and it doesn't get out.
Right. That's why the world will never know the truth about why Bruce Cassidy was fired.
Yeah, we'll keep hearing stories and stuff. But speaking of the coaching,
they'll always 100% speculation. The people say that Bergeron was driving the bus. There other people are saying that it was Jake DeBrusk. There are people that it was Brad Marchand, David. We will.
I've heard Fred Frederick's name in there.
You'll never know. You'll never know.
I would not say never.
Well, maybe someday someone will write a tell-all book, but Bergeron is never going to come out and that's not Bergeron. That is absolutely not Bergeron.
No, I'm sure there's some semblance and some of truth in some of what is out there. Oh, yeah. But to your point, Don Sweeney is never going to be like, all right, I'm setting the record straight on this. I will say someone who did that very diplomatically well was Carolina's general manager. He went on, I want to say it was The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, and was on there talking about the Mikko Rantanen, how he was brought in and then retraded, that whole thing. It was a hell of an interview, but you can see the facial expressions. It's funny that you're talking about that in the locker room where he's like stopping himself to really think about how he's going to answer the question so that he's not throwing anybody under the bus for anything. And Don Sweeney just goes, all right, I just won't say anything. It's a lot easier to just not say anything.
That's my whole point, is these general managers go on. Cam Neely used to go on a radio show once a week and then all of a sudden stopped. Right. There's nobody representing the Boston Bruins. It doesn't have to be to go out there and complain about the reps or to do this or to do that. It's to talk hockey.
But
talk about your team, and the Boston Bruins don't do it.
But you understand that Boston radio market is not going to just do that. Felger and Maz are not going to do that.
No.
There's great audio clickbait.
So that's the whole thing, and that's why they're protecting themselves. They're protecting themselves from putting that, because let's put it that way: the amount of questions that were coming at Don Sweeney about Jeremy Swayman's contract is the reason why Cam Neely opened his mouth at that media day. You know what I mean? And that's the thing, and that's why, like, when they made the decision to fire Montgomery, the next day they had the press conference, right? The next day. And again, I was there for that press conference, and then in the locker room at Warrior, and they only had certain players come out and literally every single player had the same exact thing to say.
Mm-hmm.
They are very careful about what they put out there because they don't ever want to be the team that has problems either in the locker room or miscommunication or this, that, the other thing. And I understand that may not be sexy for other people, but for the Bruins, they are very close to the vest with what is put out there about their team. So they're very careful about, and that's why another reason why you can see Pasternak, how he is grown so much as a leader, because he used to get very emotional and he would just fly off the handle with his quotes. He's very honest and he'll call out his team when they're not playing well, but he's very professional about it now.
Mm-hmm.
That,
yeah, and I think one of the times that we saw that too earlier this year, I'm sure you remember, there was a story that supposedly leaked that Marchand and Pasta weren't getting along and they hated each other, and that's one of those things where it's so. I mean, were they getting into fights in the locker room and arguments and stuff like that? Sure, the team wasn't doing well. That's what happens. Doesn't mean they hate each other though. So like. That's one where they can just sit there and go, yeah, just go answer the questions however the hell you want. And they both went, it's bullshit. We're moving on.
But even like getting into fight, they weren't getting into fights. You know what I mean? They were pushing each other. They understood that neither one of them was playing to the standard that they should have been playing at. It took Pasternak a while. And all of a sudden, since December, he finally found his game.
Yeah. Jay Crow says Felger and Maz talking hockey. Like I said, Felger is audio clickbait. That's all.
All Boston radio is.
I honestly can't tell you. One exception, and that's Ty Anderson. He does an incredible job.
But that's when he does the hockey show, and that's completely different. I'm talking about.
Oh, I know. I'm
actual Monday through Friday, whether it's EEI or 98.5. They're all. If you want real hockey stuff, but you're going to get it league wide, is listen to the NHL channel on Sirius. You know what I mean? You want to listen to guys talk about actual hockey and not do the clickbait stuff. That's what you want to listen to. I don't listen to any. I honestly, the only time I listen to local radio is if someone assigns me something to write about it. And occasionally I'll listen if I know Mike Milbury's on something, because he's always fun to listen to.
There was a question earlier, and I'm not going to go back and search for it, but I saw it somewhere else earlier. People are now asking, can we finally have the conversation? Did they choose the wrong goaltender? And I'm like, no, not yet. Like,
I'll answer that question.
Go ahead.
They did not choose the wrong goaltender. They chose the right goaltender.
Dom, you have any thoughts on that question?
This is what, year one of an 8-year deal?
Yeah.
Ask me in 8 years.
I just honestly think that the 5-year age difference. Swayman stole the job from Allmark last year. I just think that this year is the weird. You can't go by this year, and Allmark's been hurt a lot this year.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. I mean, knock on wood, Swayman hasn't been injured.
Yeah, I mean,
I just think that if you look at the future of this franchise, Swayman was the right goaltender because he in the future is going to be a better goaltender than what he's showing this year.
I don't know why, when it comes to hockey, we have to live in a video game world where every trade is so easy to make, and we live in a fast food mentality world where we need answers right now. You're not going to get the answer to that question until they're done playing, and we see what they've accomplished over the term of the contract. It's that simple.
And even Killer Beast point here, Swayman was the only reason they won a playoff series last year. Allmark has never stepped up in the playoffs. The choice was easy. Well, I think it was more based on the age, but again, to Dom's point, we're not going to know. I mean, what if Allmark goes on a run with Ottawa this year, gets into the conference finals? Now you can't say that he has never stepped up in the playoffs. So it just, you still can't say that because we don't know what's going to happen. Allmark's got 5 more years on his new deal. Swayman's got 8 on his deal.
But you also have to look at the team that they're playing for. Allmark didn't do it in Boston.
Right.
Okay. Allmark didn't do it in Boston. So if Allmark does it in Ottawa, look at that Ottawa team compared to this Bruins team this year.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That Ottawa team right now is much better.
It's not apples. It's apples and oranges. It's not apples and apples.
Well, Allmark never did it with Buffalo either. So
look at this Ottawa team to the Bruins team of 2 years ago.
Allmark was hurt for that year,
the Bruins team of 2 years ago. Let's be honest. The Bruins team of 2 years ago, they screwed up big time. And people love to blame Don Sweeney for that. And I'm like, how do you blame Don Sweeney? He put every possible best player on that roster. No one expected that Bruins team to win 65 games, number one. No one expected that Bruins team to do what they did anywhere in that season. And then
that's not my point. That's not my point, Gayle. My point is, if you take Chris's comment, what if Allmark carries them to the conference finals with this team in front of them, which is the comment you made? Well, then Allmark has done his job where he couldn't do it 2 years ago with a better team in front of him.
Right. That's true.
That's the point I'm trying to make.
He was also injured in that playoff run, though, and he never should have been playing in Game 6. That one, you even said that one's entirely on coaching.
Well, there's a lot of things that you can blame. There's a lot of things that you could blame on coaching in that playoff series.
Yeah, we don't need.
There's a lot of different things that you could blame on coaching in that playoff series.
Somebody should have been fired then. I've been very adamant about it. Somebody needed to lose their job. Pick your coach. Somebody should have lost their job.
Not Bob Asenza.
No.
I think he's the only one on the coaching staff who's safe.
Since they have switched back, since you're bringing up the coaching staff, since they've switched back to having Chris Kelly running the PK instead of the power play, their PK has been 100% better. 100% better. You can tell that he is running the PK.
Yeah, it's night and day.
I don't know why they changed it. Why would you take one of your all-time best penalty killers and make him the power play guy?
You know why, Gayle? Their excuse? Their excuse
was because he knew how to kill those penalties and he knew how people defended against the power plays.
Right.
Right. But it
clearly didn't work.
But it makes no sense. It makes no sense.
No. Theoretically, it makes sense. In the practical sense, it does not.
Yeah. So it's new team now, though. Obviously, we can dive into all the what ifs and should have beens and all that stuff. But someone asked earlier in the comments, again, I'm not going to take it back, but they're going to have a good amount of cap space going into the offseason. I don't think Don Sweeney's done when it comes to trades. First of all, I think come draft day, he will be open to making more deals. I think he's got one more deal in him that might shock people. Who that is, not Pastrnak, not McAvoy. It could be a Pavel Zacha, could be Hampus Lindholm, could be a number of different guys. But I think he's got one more deal in him. Hell, it could even be the first round draft pick to go out and get somebody. How comfortable are you guys with this roster right now going into the offseason and some of the work that needs to be done with it based on what you've seen from the new guys?
We've only seen the new guys for 4 games.
Yeah.
I know. I'm saying so far. I mean, we've already agreed that we like what we've seen from Yoki Haru. So, probably bringing him back. Plus, Don Sweeney doesn't usually trade for guys that he doesn't like to re-sign. What about Geeky's still going to be an RFA? Hustanidov is going to be an RFA. Probably again someone they're going to look to bring back. You're going to have right now. We're getting a good look at Vinny Lettieri. He's an unrestricted free agent, and then my big question
is not an NHL player.
No.
So here's my question. Why is he on the NHL roster right now getting the look that he's getting?
He's not getting a look. He's filling a spot on the roster. They'd rather give it to a guy that has NHL experience than to have one of the kids up in this shit show, Chris.
Yeah.
It's
I'm asking for the fans, okay?
No, you're asking for you.
Oh, no, I don't want them to bring back Lettieri next year. If you bring him back, he's going down to Providence.
Yeah, the guys that they brought up from Providence are guys that have experience, like Dom said, number one. Number two, it's not, they're not getting.
This comment right here, Gayle.
Yeah.
We're getting too long. It's not a look at what they're doing. That's why I asked this question, Mike, because it's not a look at what can they do. It's, we've got, what do we say, 18 games left in the season. We have to get through the rest of this season, and we want our guys that we really want to get a look at in camp next year. Like, honestly, for this road trip, I wouldn't be surprised if they called up Wahlstrom to be an extra forward for the road trip.
He scored a hat trick the other day, too.
Yeah, he's playing well, and he's someone that...
He's another AHL guy.
Yeah, but he's got NHL experience. So to bring him on the road trip, you're not going to, mess with what you're building down in Providence with Merkulov and Farinacci and Poitras and Fraser Minton and, the crew that's building down there. So...
Ryan, and I said this, I think, one time that I was here with you guys. Ryan Mougenel used the term all the time. The guys need to marinate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mike, I disagree. I think Lysell needs to stay down in Providence with these guys. I think Matthew Poitras is one of the best tools that you have at your disposal right now in Providence because of his NHL experience.
Mm-hmm. And Poitras, and I love Poitras. He still needs to get bigger. He still needs to get stronger. He's still getting targeted every single game that he plays on the NHL roster. So if you're going to bring Poitras up, you're risking him getting annihilated. There's nothing wrong with him. Brad Marchand played a full season in the AHL. David Pastrnak played a full season in the AHL. They've all played in the AHL before they came, you know what I mean? It's not poof, you know what I mean? And that's what, if you want poof, then you're the San Jose Sharks.
Yeah. And real quick, Mike then says it's a crazy idea to not look at someone like Lysell or Farinacci if he were healthy before the season ends. Going into next season without seeing them on the big squad for a few games seems dumb. So, Dom, I want to address this with one point, and that is they are all restricted free agents. So even
not Merkulov.
No, Merkulov wasn't mentioned, but Merkulov is listed as a restricted free agent. I'm looking at Wikipedia right now. But
Merkulov can leave. Merkulov can leave, and he probably will if he doesn't like what's happening in Boston.
But my point being, though, Farinacci's a restricted free agent. A lot of the guys are either restricted free agents or under contract for next year already. So with that in mind, you have first crack at all of them going into next season. So you don't need to look at them at the NHL level to know what they are and what they're capable of and how they might fit in with the guys that you bring back from the NHL roster you have right now for next season. For like a Casey Middlestad, for instance.
What's your question?
I don't have the question. He says it's a crazy idea to not look at them at the NHL level. But you know what you have in...
It
But
is.
you just said you don't want him joining the shit show that's up in Boston right now.
But it's not
all of them. Not all of them, Chris. You've heard me say it episode after episode after episode that you have to bring Georgia Merkulov up because you're not going to go spend $8 million on a free agent in July when your answer might be right there in Providence. Merkulov needs a look. I'm not saying Farinacci. 2 months ago, I said Farinacci has earned a shot. Not now. I don't want him in this shit show. Same with Patra. Same with Lysell. But you need Merkulov is the one you can lose on his own free will, not yours, on his, because he can walk. You need an answer on. And you're not getting that answer in the American Hockey League. You need to see what he can do at the NHL level before you go give out $50 million to somebody else when he might be the answer.
Gayle, were you going to add something to that?
No, I was reading the
I like that one.
I was reading the one about I'm beyond, and I'm sorry to say it this way, but I am so done with the let's see how he does with Pasta comment about every single player. Pastrnak has his line mates. He has Pavel Zacha and he has Morgan Geekie. When you are not mathematically out of the playoffs and you are still fighting to make it to, why would you break up the only line that is consistently scoring to see if someone can get a look?
Yeah. If you're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, then you can start jumbling up that top line and see how Pasta looks with Middlestad and so on and so forth. But
why? Pastrnak is 100%. He loves playing with Pavel Zacha. 100%. Their chemistry is so, it's not quite to the level of Bergeron and Marchand, but it may get there and it may not. But with Pastrnak, Geekie, and Pavel Zacha, the way the three of them are playing together,
you don't break that up.
You don't break that up. That's like not without having a proven player to step in. Like the only time they used to break up Bergeron, Pastrnak, and Marchand was because Jake DeBrusk needed to get going again. You know what I mean? Like, but they didn't break. So, you know what I mean? Like, you don't break up two of those players just because, oh, I want to see how Merkulov will play. Why? He's not going to be there next year on that line. He's not going to start the season on a line with Pastrnak, even if he makes the roster next year.
Now, I've seen this narrative specifically with what you're talking about, where people are saying we need to see Morgan Geekie away from Pastrnak and Zacha, move him down to see how he is. What's that, Dom?
Go back to the comment I had up because I have to address it.
Oh, Dom, chill, baby, chill.
Listen, I will tell you guys, Chris purposely tries to goad me in because he knows controversy sells. And
you're fun when you get all
when he has me repeat the same thing I've said for 10 friggin' shows now.
So can we go back to that other comment now that Dom throws Chris under the bus and backed up over him?
What else am I here for, you know?
So this comment right here. Again, why? Why do you need to try Geekie away from Pastrnak?
So
Geekie for the past 2 seasons playing with Pastrnak has had career highs.
I understand the desire to want to see what he is away from that player, but here's the thing. You know what he is with the player. That's who he's going to be with. You're going to pay him or you're not based on how he is playing with David Pastrnak.
Correct.
So at this point, you have more leverage than he does because he's a restricted free agent. And so anybody who comes out now, if someone is willing to throw a bag at him and say, we think he's going to be this good, and that return between the draft picks and getting him off your roster, and if someone's offering him a contract that's going to get you a first and a third, buy Geeky.
Right.
We can replace you. David Pastrnak can play with anybody, right?
I wouldn't say we can replace because they never replaced Jake DeBrusk.
Okay, well,
but I digress. But also, Jake DeBrusk, sorry, wasn't worth the money he was asking for.
Right. So we can probably replace you. Let me rephrase it to that. We'll take the first and the third right now.
Chris, you're the GOAT, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Must be the beard because Ace mentioned the beard earlier. So if someone's offering him that kind of contract, you let him go. You take that return and you deal with trying to replace him. Otherwise, you are able to match any other offer. If someone comes out and offers him 4 years for $3 million, you're matching that. To put him next to Pastrnak for 4 years at $3 million, you're matching that. There's not a deal that another team is going to offer him as a restricted free agent that you're not going to be thrilled to get the compensation back in draft picks or be not willing to match. If anything, let him go shop the market and see what other teams are going to offer him, and then either take the draft pick compensation or your contract's written for you. You don't have to negotiate. Anyway, the next question here was from Michael. Can we finally say Dean Letourneau pick was bad? No, we cannot.
No. It's his first year in college hockey.
I think Mike does this every week just to get us going. I really do. It's Michael Gillis, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I think Mike does it intentionally every week to get us going.
I know, and I'll pull it up every week, and I'll answer the same time. No, but there will be a time at some point where we go, yes, let's have that conversation.
No, because we've had the conversation, but the answer never changes to something that Mike likes.
Yeah, no,
he wants us to say he's a bust, and it ain't gonna happen in year one.
Right.
Heck, I won't even say Fabian Lysell is a bust yet. Still
Dean
21
Dean Letourneau wasn't even supposed to go to BC this year.
No,
it was a last-minute decision.
And then Jay Crow says Geeky needs to show he can do it without Pasta if he's going to get the money. How much money? Like, you're not paying Geeky $8 million to be on the opposite wing of David Pastrnak. So
we're not.
No, you don't. I'm not.
Oh, okay.
If Morgan Geeky comes to you and says, I want $8 million, even for one season, you're not signing him to that. So it just, no, we don't really need to see it that much. Mike says we stink too much to have lines that are set in stone right now, in my opinion. Minus the first line. Everything else is up in the air. But you're starting to see a little chemistry starting to form. So we shat all over Jim Montgomery at the beginning of the year for shaking things up too much. You got to give him a couple days. So, want you to say we should have.
Michael, I want you to tell me where you live and how many Ontario Hockey League games you go to before I will say they should have taken Liam Greentree, because I cover the OHL. You can go to ohlwriters.me and you can see all my draft work going back to 2010 and every individual player. I know Liam Greentree. I've watched him for years before he went to the OHL. So you tell me where you live and how many of his games you've gone to.
Yeah, I'll let him have that argument with you.
So Kepke, to answer that question about will Sweeney re-up
Kepke?
Yeah. So he's a UFA and he's not making a lot. I don't think he gets that big of a raise. And he's been okay. I mean, he started strong, went invisible. He's playing okay defensively, I guess. But if you can get him for short money, I don't see why you wouldn't keep him.
Well, right now he's costing you less than John Beecher, so I'd rather bring him back than Beecher.
Yeah.
Oh, good name. Gayle, John Beecher. What are you doing with John Beecher?
Well, he's an RFA. So
Mhm.
and this year, I have no idea where he went this year, but he went somewhere. He is not the John Beecher that played last year. I have no idea what happened with him. I think maybe I don't know, trade him for a pick. I don't know. Trade his rights for a pick. I don't know. I mean, I think
Are you giving him his qualifying offer?
I'm
not.
I mean,
It's
it's hard to say.
$874,000.
How much
874,000.
for
If
1
he
year?
signs it. Yeah.
For 1 year? I would
Yeah.
for 1 year. I would for 1 year. Because I think again, the whole team has had a bad year. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? The only players that haven't had bad years are David Pastrnak and Morgan Geekie. They're the only two that have been, and they both started off slow, but they've come on strong late. The whole team has had a bad year. So I said, well, and I would say Mark Castle, like I like what he's done. But also that line, because Castle's been playing up and down, so Beecher hasn't really had consistency either on his line.
Mhm.
So and that can affect a player. He's also I mean for 800 and change for 1 year,
Look,
why not? You know what I mean?
I'm not going to berate the team for giving him his qualifying offer because it is such a low number. And, you know, he is still, 23. He's good on faceoffs. He knows what his role is. He's not causing any problems. He's avoided injuries. So, like, there's, $875,000 of value right there.
Right. I mean, if you
Fourth
want
line left wing, fourth line center.
right.
He's solid. Fine.
Yeah. I mean, he plays on the penalty kill. He's not a power play guy.
He
Right. And
stands up for his
exactly, Evan.
teammates.
It's not going to make or break the offseason if you give him his qualifying. I think you got to give him one more look and see what he can do. And if next year it doesn't seem like it's working out, that's why it's only a 1 year. I would only do a 1 year qualifying, you know what I mean? And see and
Mhm.
tell him that. Say, you had a down season. Let's see what you can do. We can revisit it. Because that's one thing that Sweeney does do. He rewards the players that reward the Bruins. And I think that's
Mhm.
part of why, and the fans get this tunnel vision with their favorite players and don't look at the whole picture on what a player does or does not do on a consistent basis. And I know people love to throw out, they're not outplaying their mistakes. Okay. I know that Cam Neely said you have to outplay your mistakes. I get that. But he's talking about the guys in Providence. He's not talking about the guys on the NHL roster. Because the guys on the NHL roster, some of them maybe shouldn't be on the NHL roster, but they kind of have no choice, right? But again, you cannot tell me that there's one defenseman down in Providence that should play over Nikita Zadorov.
No.
No. No. No, there isn't. There is not. I do have another question for you because you do work for NESN.
Ugh. Sorry, did I say that out loud?
And Chris
I'll edit that out, Gayle.
can
Don't worry.
answer this too. My answer to the question would be geeky at this point. But I want to know from you guys, who is your NESN 7th Player Award
I'm
winner?
glad you asked that because I was going to bring it up before we signed off tonight.
I don't think it's geeky. Because
Okay.
he's playing. Yes, he got more goals or whatever, but they expected him to be one of those players to play to be that player that they were last year. Okay, the expectations on Geeky was that he was going to be a better player this year. I think right now your 7th player is Mark Kastelik.
I think he's the one who's going to win it. I agree with you on that one. Just so people know that Morgan Geekie, Mark Kastelik, Jonas Korpisalo, Mason Lohrei, and Andrew Peak are the 5 nominees. I wouldn't be surprised though. Like I think an underrated candidate is Andrew Peak.
Yeah, but
I think
yeah.
Stelic's gonna win.
He doesn't jump off the page though.
Right.
You know
That's what I'm
mean?
saying. I think Kostelik's going to win. Everybody's going to remember what he did early in the season, all the production, the fourth line, and how he stands up for his teammates. And he's going to win, and he's not undeserving. I'm just saying we've got to give a little bit of love to Andrew Peak for stepping up the way that he has this year as an extra stay-at-home defensive defenseman. He doesn't produce flashy points and all that fun jazz, but he's doing his role much better than anybody could have anticipated this year. Especially with the injuries.
I like Peak and Zadorov together.
Would you go back to Zadorov and Peak, or do you like Zadorov and Yoki Haru?
I haven't seen enough of them yet. Okay. But I liked Zadorov and Peak. And I think when all the injuries started happening and things started, changing, that's when things started to, so it's hard to say. But if this team is 100% healthy next season on the defensive side, I like Lowry with Lindholm because Carlo's gone, or Lowry with McAvoy. But that, you know what I mean? So, but that's the problem is, so now if you could actually put Lindholm with Yokuhari, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Because they'll complement each other.
That wouldn't be a very bad second pairing either.
Right. Because if you look at it, when Lindholm and Carlo played together, the reason why that pairing worked so well is because Lindholm would jump up in the play and Carlo stayed behind.
Yeah, I mean, I think your top four next year are going to be Lowry and McAvoy, and then you'll see Lindholm and Yoki Haru, or flop the two on the left and have McAvoy and Lindholm, Lowry and Yoki Haru.
And then you have your third defensive pair is Zadorov and Peak.
I'm very okay with that. I'm not complaining at all.
Yoki Haru is a very underrated puck mover. Clearing the zone, getting the puck out of the zone.
Right.
Very underrated in that fashion.
And that's why he would play well with Lindholm, because he can move that puck where Lindholm will skate. You know what I mean? He'll be first to break down to the, you know what I mean? So they'll complement each other. I think personally.
Real quick, Mike, I do see your comment. Korpisalo, a sneaky dark horse for the seventh player. The problem is, and yes, a lot of people thought he was going to be dog shit this year. He just doesn't have enough games. So it's really tough as a number two goaltender. If he had taken over the starting job and was the number one, then you'd have an argument for him. He's performed better than people have thought, but it's just the game count, games played. I just don't think he can pull it off.
Can you imagine?
He was the number one on opening night.
Well, can you imagine? Seriously, imagine the shit the fans would have if Korpisalo stole the number one spot from Jeremy Swayman after signing.
I know,
man. I would cancel all my social media.
I think we'd have to. Although we'd be coming on here every week going, calm down, or something. Oh man. I just, again, the game's played, I get the merit behind him as a candidate, but it just, honestly, I think he's fifth out of the voting options. So
see, now the thing, the problem that I have with the seventh player award, because it's supposed to be the player that has played beyond expectations, blah, 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 blah. And it's become a popularity contest.
I hate that about this award.
Old school Boston Bruins fans knew what the seventh player was. They understood it. And not to knock newer Bruins fans, but they literally latch on to their favorite player and they refuse to look past those goggles.
Yeah, they go, who's my favorite on the list? And then they just go vote for him 150 times. So, again, I'm not going to be upset if Geeky wins it. I totally understand the argument for him.
Yeah.
I think Kostelic has gone more above and beyond, and the fact that he's under contract already, I think people are gonna like that about him. And a lot of people are gonna look at Geeky and say, "Well, what is he away from David Pastrnak?" And that might hold them back for voting for him as well. So
I'm so sick of hearing that statement.
sorry, I just think that's how people are gonna, go with it.
He's not playing above and beyond expectations, Kevin. He's doing what he did last year.
That's why I don't agree with it, because he's done this before. So he's on pace to break it a little bit because he's with David Pastrnak. He's not shattering. He's not all of a sudden a 40-goal scorer. So
now, what if he was doing it all season and didn't have the cold start?
Okay, so last year he had 39 points. This year he has 35 points. He's on pace, okay? He has more goals, but he has less assists, okay? So he's not playing above expectations. He's playing where they thought after last year. Last year, he should have won the 7th player award. He went from 9 goals to 17 goals.
yeah, he's projecting to grow from last year exactly how the team and most people would have expected a 25 to a 6-year-old player to go.
Right.
The fact that I would make the case that he's only doing it because he's playing with David Pastrnak, and therefore he's less deserving of the award.
Right.
Because if he wasn't playing with David Pastrnak, he wouldn't be on this pace, and therefore he is less qualified for the award. Right. I would make the case that he's not outperforming what he is expected because of who he's playing with.
Right. Right. If you're saying that he needs to play outside of Pastrnak to see, which other people are saying, not me, but to see what he's actually worth, then how are you saying that he's playing above expectations?
There you go. Can't have it both ways. I'm not sure. I think they're trying to say Geeky's a third liner, but he's not.
Wait.
He's playing on a first line. So which one?
I don't know what that question is. We get the answers to some of these questions this time next year. What does that mean?
Oh, Geeky being a first liner. Who do they bring back? Like, how are they? Is it consistent performance? That kind of thing. I think that's where he's going with it. So, let's see. Mike says we don't want to remove him from the first line. In no way was he expected to be a first liner. But he wasn't performing like this on the third line or the second line. He is performing like this on the first line.
I don't think he's being punished, Kevin.
Yeah, no, it's
no, Kevin's saying that we're punishing him. I don't think we're punishing him.
So when last season, 23-24, when he put up 17 goals, 22 assists, 39 total points, he was averaging 15 minutes and 25 seconds average time on ice. And he played in 76 games. Who were his teammates? Who were his line mates, rather? He was on the third line for most of the season. Right?
Mm-hmm.
This year, he spent most of the season on the top line with David Pastrnak. He's at 35 points.
He started the season with Charlie Coyle and Brad Marchand.
Right, but I'm saying he's played most of the season.
Right. Well, yes.
Of the 63 games he's played, 40 of them on the top line, ballpark, and he's averaging 16:34 time on ice. So he's barely getting a little bit more time on ice, and he's barely ready to out-pursue what he was on pace for last year. So because he's at 35 instead of 39 with plenty more games to go. So
yeah, but
he's not with those line mates. He's with elevated line mates with Zacha and Pastrnak on that first line. So
but here's what you
should have made.
Here's what you're failing to do, Chris. And let's not guess at how many games he's played with Pastrnak. You can easily look it up. What's his production with Pastrnak, and what does that work out to over 82 games? And then you see what he is doing.
I'm going to go pull it up real quick.
You can't punish him for his time with Coyle and Marchand and then credit David Pastrnak for his time with David Pastrnak, because the numbers with Coyle and Marchand bring those averages way down. So take what he's doing with Pastrnak and expand that over an 82 game schedule, and that's what he's on pace for.
I'm going to pull it up right now. So Geeky, I'm going to have to lower the minute count. So Geeky, and he also spent a lot of time with JVR last year and Frederick.
Mhm.
So let's see, last year minutes, Marchand, Heinen. So wow, he really didn't get
Forget
a lot.
last year. Forget last year. Just go to David
Okay.
Pastrnak and Morgan Geeky this year. That's all we're interested in. Because if he had been with Coyle and Marchand all season, there's no hope in hell he'd be putting up the numbers he's putting up now.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly
Right.
my point.
Just give me no, because you're averaging the two out. You're averaging his time with Pastrnak and with the other two, and saying this is what he is on pace for. Give me the numbers with Pastrnak.
I'm trying to pull it up right now for the lines you want. He is so Geeky, Zaka, Pastrnak. What are you looking for? You want expected goals?
Games played.
53.
53. How many goals did he have?
This year so far he's at 22
with them.
So far he's at 22 goals on the season.
With Pavel Zacha and Morgan Geeky and David Pastrnak, Morgan Geeky is scoring at a 34 goal pace. He's not scoring at a 25 goal pace. He's scoring at a 34 goal pace with them. That's what I'm saying. You're punishing him his pace for with his time with Marchand and Coyle when he wasn't producing. But with Pastrnak, he's scoring at almost a 35 goal pace.
I have to look into these numbers because the way Money Puck has it set up, it doesn't separate Geeky statistics based on, it just has the entire line statistics. So I'll have to do more digging into it while I'm not causing dead air. But my point being is he's producing more with David Pastrnak in that line than he was last year. So
but he's not. But my point is he's not scoring at a 25 goal pace with them. He's scoring at a 35 goal pace with them. You have to take away the time with Marchand and Coyle to find out what pace he's scoring at with Pastrnak.
Right. So then to Kevin's point, I'm not saying we're punishing him, but we are projecting that his numbers would be much lower if he's not on the top line, which means he's not outperforming and he's not the seventh player at that point.
But if he was with him the whole season, he'd be on a 35 goal pace, which is really outproducing what he did a season ago.
And if he was, then he's in the conversation for the seventh player award.
Right.
But Dom, I know how much you hate hypotheticals.
No, but I'm just saying your numbers on what he's on pace for is incorrect with David Pastrnak because he didn't play with David Pastrnak all season long.
Anyway, we're coming at it from just different angles, but the point is we're both there. But I'll look into those numbers for you too, so we can have that figured out. JD says Geeky's chemistry right now is good with Pastrnak and Zacha. I think to your point, Gayle, that's why they're not going to break him up.
And they shouldn't. Gayle's absolutely right. They shouldn't break him up. If they did what you saw last night, you'd see a lot more often.
Oh boy,
So
I just
over the
realized
last 20 games, Geeky's expected goals were 5.8, but he scored 11.
over the last 20 games.
Over the last 20 games, his expected goals were 5.8, and he's tallied 11. So yes, he is definitely, and that's, and if you look at the only person that has more, the only forward that has more minutes ice time than him is Pavel Zacha and David Pastrnak. That's it. Those are the only two.
Yeah, I know you get some additional stats too, so glad that you were able to pull that up.
I mean, yeah, so, but again, he is playing with David Pastrnak. So if he's on a line, like to your point, what you said, Dom, if he's on a line with any other forward besides David Pastrnak and Pavel Zacha, is he putting up those numbers?
No, he's not. That's
So
not the
why-
point I make. That's not the point I'm making, Gayle. When you say he's on pace for, you have to separate his time with Coyle
Right.
and Marchand, because he wasn't with Pastrnak, so that's not what he's on pace for with David Pastrnak.
Right. But what I'm saying is, though, is that the offensive output that he has had this year is because he's playing on a line with David Pastrnak and Pavel Zacha.
Right.
Okay. So I don't think saying, thank you, Dom. That's what I was trying to explain, but I don't have a mic and 150 characters.
Well, first of all, Kevin, that's why you need to come on the show, because we continually invite Kevin on, and I know he's enjoying his retirement days from the microphone, but still, Kevin, that's why you got to come on.
But my thing is that the reason why I'm saying that I don't think he's deserving of the 7th player award is because if he were not on that top line, I'm not sure he puts up those offensive numbers. So therefore, like last year, he put up those numbers not playing with David Pastrnak, right? We discovered that he didn't play a lot last year. Last year, he played more with Trent Frederick, JVR. You know, we discovered that he started the season not playing with David Pastrnak. He was playing, and he was not playing well. We can all agree on that, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the numbers that he's putting up now, if you take him off the line and you put him with, say you put him with Casey Middlestat and Cole Koepke, or you put him with, you know, someone other than David Pastrnak, maybe you put him with Lindholm and you put him with Lindholm and, you know, someone else. If he's still producing, then yes, he earns the 7th player award.
He also deserves credit because nobody else they tried in that spot worked, but he did.
100% agree with you on that, Dom. And we've been in agreement with that all year. I just don't think because he is able to keep up with them, that doesn't mean his level of play is so elevated that it outdoes the 7th player award for somebody else, like Mark Kastelik, who's jumped up and down the lineup and been consistent, whether he's your 4th line center, 4th line right wing, 3rd line right wing. You know, I mean, he's even jumped to 2nd line right wing, and his game has been consistent. He's not expected to put up the goals that he has this year. And yes, he's in a dry spell compared to where he was the first 2 months of the season, but we knew that pace wasn't going to keep up. But what he has done is he has had his teammates back for every single game that he's been in. He's been physical, and I'm trying to see how many games he's played in, but I want to say he hasn't missed many, if any. Let's see. He's only missed looks like about 11 games so far.
Yeah, he was injured for some. Remember, he got.
That's right. That's
and
right.
he wasn't the same. He wasn't the same when he came back.
No,
either.
it took him a while to find his game again. The other thing about Mark is that people have to remember that he was part of the Allmark trade.
Mm-hmm.
And people forget.
And he got his extension.
Right. He, again, is one of those Bruin type players. Again, it's a bottom six, not a top six. A bottom six forward that's going to give you minutes, that's going to play responsibly, that's going to play the Bruin way. He's not going to set the offense on fire. He's not expected to set the offense on fire. But he plays responsibly, and he plays like a Bruin.
Mike says Kastelic and Geeky are both flawed candidates. They're all flawed for one reason or another. That's why it goes out to a vote. I don't think the team has a perfect candidate. I would say that someone who might be missing from this list at this point, based on how the season has gotten better for him, Nikita Zadorov.
No, I think he hasn't played to the expectations of the Bruins fans.
But that's what I mean, is as far as what the team expected him and what we expected from him, he started out at one level and his game has grown consistently throughout the season. It's had ups and downs, peaks and valleys, all that stuff. But where he is now compared to where he was game one, night and day difference.
Who's the...
And right now
on that list, you could argue that Mason Lohrei belongs to be the winner.
Absolutely. I mean, considering the fact that right now he's the one who's fixing your power play.
And you've lost two key defensemen. He is 100%. Let's see.
That's why I went with Andrew Peeke. Because while he doesn't have the flashy offensive numbers, he's been consistent all season long. And he's been elevated into a role that he shouldn't be in. Let's be honest. Andrew Peeke should not be a second pairing defenseman right now.
Mason Lohrei had an uptake in more than almost 3 minutes of ice time, though.
Fair enough. Either one.
Guys, you keep talking. I have to go because I have my stuff I have to look after. And early to bed because I've got to go to the hospital in the morning for some crap. So
I didn't even realize what time it was. So, and I don't want to keep Gayle away from her family more than we already do.
That's why I put my alarm right near the thing so you can hear it, but you don't.
Normally I do. I think we were just having good conversation over it. So
I've really got to fly. So you guys keep going. All right.
Well, Gayle, I was gonna say we'll wrap it up and we'll sign you off, Dom, and then we'll let Gayle get her plugs in for where people can find her, and then we'll let people get out of here. We will be back tomorrow for another prospect show, and we have a special episode on Wednesday. Dom,
good night, Dom. Thank you.
You have a good night. We'll finish up with Gayle here.
Good night.
Any last words for you, Dom? All right. I didn't even realize the time.
someone put it 8 p.m.
Oh, right here, Gleb Watch, because Colorado game is on. We've had a lot of great comments though, Gayle. I can't thank you enough for coming on here again. It can't go this long before we have you on again, especially with all the changes that this roster's gone through.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? I know you're going through some stuff right now, but you're not going anywhere for us. So if you don't mind sharing where people can find you and continue to find you.
You can still find me on NESN.com until at least May 2nd. We're still trying to figure out what that future looks like after that. But you can find me there. You can find me on Twitter, Gayle @_Troiani, TROIANI. Same name on Blue Sky, I don't know, or whatever that thing is.
Yeah, I don't use that one enough either.
I'm on Instagram too. It's always my first name, my last name, but you can find me anywhere. Pretty much.
Awesome. And I'll put your socials in the episode description as well. Again, thank you so much for joining us.
I want to ask Michael before he leaves if you could add 3 players from the 2011 roster to this team as players or coaches.
Oh, that's a good question. We'll have to dive into that. Those are great questions that people should start sending in, and then we can address those during the off season. Those will be fun off season questions to have.
I want to know if they mean players or coaches, though.
Yeah. As coaches, I know who I'd want right off the rip. The question is do they want to do it?
Yeah, I think I have a different opinion than a lot of people. So
probably. Yeah, as I was saying, we have our prospect show. Dom and I will be back tomorrow, 6:30, same time. That link is already on our YouTube channel, so you can follow that one. And then Dom and I are having a special guest from McKeen's Hockey to come on Wednesday. We are starting that one early, 4 p.m. start for that one. We are diving into the NCAA free agents that are going to be available. So definitely check us out. The link for that one is also on our YouTube channel as well. This one has been awesome. We could continue to go on for hours, but again, thank your family for me.
You're welcome.
And as always, go Bees.